Iran, I/ɪ́rʌn/ or /ɪ́rʌn/ Persian, ɪ'rʌn, also formerly known as Persia, /pr/ or /pr/, and officially the Islamic Republic of Iran since 1980, is a country in Western Asia. It is bordered on the north by Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkmenistan, with Kazakhstan and Russia. Across the Caspian Sea, on the east by Afghanistan and Pakistan, on the south by the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, on the west by Iraq, and on the northwest by Turkey. With a land area of 1,648,195 km2, 636,372 sq mi, this country, in the Middle East, is the 18th largest country in the world, and with over 77 million people, is the world's 17th most populous nation. Iran is home to one of the world's oldest civilizations, beginning with the formation of the Elamite kingdom in 2800 BCE. The Iranian Medes unified Iran into the first of a series of empires in 625 BCE, after which it became the dominant cultural and political power in the region. Cyrus the Great founded the Achaemenid Empire in 550 BCE, which had its greatest extent comprised major portions of the ancient world, stretching from the Indus Valley in the east to Thrace and Macedon on the northeastern border of Greece, making it the largest empire the world had yet seen. Following its collapse from the conquests of Alexander the Great in 330 BCE, Iran once again became a great power under the Sasanian dynasty, exerting influence well beyond its borders. In 633 CE, Arab Muslim armies invaded Iran and conquered the region by 651 CE. Iran would thereafter become a vital contributor to the subsequent Islamic Golden Age, producing many important scientists, scholars, artists, and thinkers. The emergence in 1501 of the Safavid dynasty, which promoted 12th Shia Islam as the official religion, marked one of the most important turning points in Iranian and Muslim history. The Persian Constitutional Revolution of 1906 established the nation's first parliament, which operated within a constitutional monarchy. Following a coup d'état instigated by the UK and the US in 1953, Iran gradually became a more autocratic country. Growing dissent against foreign influence and political repression culminated in the Iranian Revolution, which led to the establishment of an Islamic Republic on the 1st of April, 1979. A geographically diverse, but mostly mountainous country, Iran has always been of significant geopolitical importance, owing to its location at the crossroads of Central Asia, Western Asia, and South Asia. Tehran is the capital and largest city, serving as the cultural, commercial, and industrial center of the nation. Iran is a major regional and middle power, exerting considerable influence in international energy security and the world economy through its large reserves of fossil fuels, which include the largest natural gas supply in the world and the fourth largest proven petroleum reserves. Iran is a founding member of the UNAM, OIC, and OPEC. Its unique political system, based on the 1979 Constitution, combines elements of a parliamentary democracy with a religious theocracy run by the country's clergy, wherein the highest state authority is the supreme leader. A multicultural nation comprising numerous ethnic and linguistic groups, Shia Islam is the official religion and Persian is the official language. Etymology. The name of Iran is the modern Persian derivative from the Proto-Iranian term Orien, meaning land, of the Aryans first attested in Zoroastrianism's Avesta tradition. The term Aryan is found to refer to Iran in a 3rd century Sassanid inscription, and the Parthian inscription that accompanies it uses the Parthian term Orien in reference to Iranians. Historically, Iran has been referred to as Persia, or similar, La Perse, Persian, ɪ́rʌːn, etc., by the Western world, mainly due to the writings of Greek historians, who called Iran Persis, meaning land of the Persians. In 1935, Reza Shah requested that the international community refer to the country as Iran. Opposition to the name change led to the reversal of the decision, and in 1959 both names were to be used interchangeably. Today both Persia and Iran are used interchangeably in cultural contexts. However, Iran is the name used officially in political contexts. The historical and cultural wider usage of Iran is not restricted to the modern state proper. ɪ'rʌn or Nzamn, Greater Iran, corresponded to territories of Iranian cultural or linguistic zones. Besides modern Iran, it included portions of the Caucasus, Mesopotamia, the Indian subcontinent and Central Asia. History. Early history in Iran. Further information: archaeological sites in Iran, Proto-Elamite, ʔiːrʒn culture, Tepesial, and Shari-Sukhte. The earliest archaeological artifacts in Iran, like those excavated at the Kashafrud and Gunyapar sites, attest to a human presence in Iran since the Lower Paleolithic era. Neanderthal artifacts dating back to the Middle Paleolithic period have been found mainly in the Zagros region at sites such as Warwasi and Yafti Cave. Page needed. Early agricultural communities began to flourish in Iran at around 8000 BC, with settlements such as Kogabonut, Susa, and Kogamish developing in the Zagros region. Page needed. The emergence of Susa as a city is determined by C14 dating as early as 4395 BC. There are dozens of prehistoric sites across the Iranian plateau pointing to the existence of ancient cultures and urban settlements in the 4th millennium BC. During the Bronze Age, Iran was home to several civilizations such as Elam, ʔiːrʒn, and Zayandeh civilizations. Elam, the most prominent of these civilizations, developed in the southwest of Iran, alongside those in Mesopotamia. The development of writing in Elam in 4th millennium BC paralleled that in Sumer. The Elamite kingdom continued its existence until the emergence of the Median and Achaemenid empires. Classical era. Ruins of the Achaemenid Palace of Persepolis, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. During the 2nd millennium BC, Proto-Iranian tribes arrived in Iran from the Eurasian steppes, rivaling the native settlers of the country. As these tribes dispersed into the wider area of Greater Iran and beyond, the boundaries of modern Iran were dominated by the Persian, Parthian, and Median tribes. From the late 10th to late 7th centuries BC, these Iranic peoples, together with the pre-Iranic kingdoms, fell under the domination of the Assyrian Empire, based in northern Mesopotamia. Under King Keuxares, the Medes and Persians entered into an alliance with Nabopolassar of Babylon, and also the Scythians, Cimmerians, and Arameans, and together they attacked the Assyrian Empire. The civil war ravaged the Assyrian Empire between 616 BC and 605 BC, thus freeing their respective peoples from 3 centuries of Assyrian rule. The reunification of the Median tribes under a single ruler in 728 BC led to the creation of a Median Empire, which by 612 BC controlled the whole of Iran as well as eastern Anatolia. In 550 BC, Cyrus the Great, from the state of Anshan, took over the Median Empire and founded the Achaemenid Empire by unifying other city-states. The conquest of Media happened as a result of what is called the Persian Revolt, which was initially triggered by the actions of the Median ruler Astyages, and quickly spread to other provinces, as they allied with the Persians. Later conquests under Cyrus and his successors expanded the empire to include Lydia, Babylon, Egypt, and the lands to the west of the Indus and Oxus rivers. Conflict on the western borders began with the famous Greco-Persian Wars, which continued through the first half of the 5th century BC and ended with the Persian withdrawal from all of their European territories. The empire had a centralized, bureaucratic administration under the emperor and a large professional army and civil services, inspiring similar developments in later empires. In 334 BC, Alexander the Great invaded the Achaemenid Empire, defeating the last Achaemenid emperor Darius III at the Battle of Issus in 333 BC. Following the premature death of Alexander, Iran came under the control of Hellenistic Seleucid Empire. In the middle of the 2nd century BC, Parthia rose to become the main power in Iran and continued as a feudal monarchy for nearly 5 centuries, until 224 AD, when it was succeeded by the Sassanid Empire. The Sassanids established an empire roughly within the frontiers achieved by the Achaemenids, with a capital at Ctesiphon. Most of the period of the Parthian and Sassanid empires were overshadowed by the Roman-Persian wars, which raged on their western borders for over 700 years. These wars exhausted both Romans and Sassanids, which arguably led to the defeat of both at the hands of the invading Muslim Arabs. Middle Ages, 650–1501. Khwarezmid Empire around 1200. The prolonged Roman-Persian wars, as well as social conflict within the empire, opened the way for an Islamic invasion of Iran in the 7th century. Gundeshapur was the most important medical center of the ancient world at the time of the Islamic conquest. Initially defeated by the Rashidun Caliphate, Iran later came under the rule of their successors, the Umayyad and Abbasid Caliphates. The process of conversion of Iranians to Islam which followed was prolonged and gradual. Under the new Arab elite of the Rashidun, and later Umayyad Caliphates, Iranians, both Muslim, Mawali, and non-Muslim, Dhimmi, were discriminated, being excluded from government and military, and having to pay a special tax. In 750 the Abbasids succeeded in overthrowing the Umayyad Caliphate, mainly due to the support from dissatisfied Iranian Mawali. The Mawali formed the majority of the rebel army, which was led by the Iranian general Abu Muslim. After 2 centuries of Arab rule, semi-independent and independent Iranian kingdoms, such as the Tahirids, Saffarids, Samanids, and Buyids, began to appear on the fringes of the declining Abbasid Caliphate. By the Samanid era in the 9th and 10th centuries, Iran's efforts to regain its independence had been well solidified. Persian miniature depicting Timur's campaign in India. The arrival of the Abbasid caliphs saw a revival of Persian culture and influence, and a move away from Arabic culture. The role of the old Arab aristocracy was slowly replaced by a Persian bureaucracy. The blossoming Persian literature, philosophy, medicine, and art became major elements in the forming of a Muslim civilization during the Islamic Golden Age. The Islamic Golden Age reached its peak in the 10th and 11th centuries, during which Persia was the main theater of scientific activity. After the 10th century, Persian, alongside Arabic, was used for scientific, philosophical, historical, mathematical, musical, and medical works, as important Iranian writers such as Nasir al-Din al-Tusi, Avicenna, Utbah-ud-Din Shirazi, Nasir Khusraw, and Biruni made contributions to Persian scientific writing. The cultural revival that began in the Abbasid period led to a resurfacing of Iranian national identity, and so earlier attempts of Arabization never succeeded in Iran. The Iranian Shu'ubiyya movement became a catalyst for Iranians to regain their independence in their relations with the Arab invaders. The most notable effect of the movement was the continuation of the Persian language, attested to the epic poet Ferdowsi, now regarded as the most important figure in Persian literature. The 10th century saw a mass migration of Turkic tribes from Central Asia into the Iranian plateau. Turkic tribesmen were first used in the Abbasid army as slave warriors, Mamluks, replacing Persian and Arab elements within the army. As a result, the Mamluks gained significant political power. In 999, Iran came under the rule of Ghaznavid dynasty, whose rulers were of Mamluk Turk origin, and later under the Turkish Seljuk and Khwarezmian empires. These Turks had been Persianized and had adopted Persian models of administration and rulership. The result of the adoption and patronage of Persian culture by Turkish rulers was the development of a distinct Turco-Persian tradition. In 1219–21 the Khwarezmian Empire suffered a devastating invasion by Genghis Khan's Mongol army. Mongol violence and depredations killed up to 3/4 of the population of the Iranian plateau, possibly 10 to 15 million people. Some historians have estimated that Iran's population did not again reach its pre-Mongol levels until the mid-20th century. Following the fracture of the Mongol Empire, in 1256 Hulagu Khan, Genghis Khan's grandson, established the Ilkhanate dynasty in Iran. In 1370 yet another conqueror, Timur, commonly known as Tamerlane, in the west, followed Hulagu's example, establishing the Timurid dynasty, which lasted for another 156 years. In 1387, Timur ordered the complete massacre of Isfahan, reportedly killing 70,000 citizens. Hulagu, Timur and their successors soon came to adopt the ways and customs of the Persians, choosing to surround themselves with a culture that was distinctively Persian. Dynasties, 1501–1979. Shah Ismail I, the founder of the Safavid dynasty, 1501–1736. Safavid dynasty, Afsharid dynasty, Zand dynasty, Qajar dynasty, and Pahlavi dynasty. At the start of the 16th century, Shah Ismail I established the Safavid dynasty in western Persia and Azerbaijan. He subsequently extended his authority over all of Persia. Ismail instigated a forced conversion from Sunni to Shia Islam. The rivalry between Safavid Persia and the Ottoman Empire led to several Ottoman-Persian wars. The Safavid era peaked in the reign of the brilliant soldier, statesman, and administrator Shah Abbas I, 1587–1629. Following a slow decline in the late 17th and early 18th centuries, the Safavid dynasty was ended by Pashtun rebels who besieged Isfahan and defeated Sultan Hussein in 1722. In 1729, a Khorasan chieftain, Nader Shah, successfully drove out, then conquered the Pashtun invaders. In 1738–9 he invaded India and sacked Delhi. Following a brief period of civil war and turmoil, sparked by Nader Shah's assassination, Karim Khan came to power in 1750, bringing a period of relative peace and prosperity. Another civil war ensued after Karim Khan's death in 1779, out of which Aga Muhammad Khan emerged victorious, founding the Qajar dynasty in 1794. Qajar rule is characterized as a century of misrule. The Great Persian Famine of 1870–1871 is believed to have caused the death of 1.5 million persons, or 20–25% of Persia's population. Nader Shah at the sack of Delhi. Whilst resisting efforts to be colonized, Iran suffered in the 19th century as a result of Russian and British empire building. Known as the Great Game, losing much of its territory in the Russo-Persian and the Anglo-Persian Wars. A series of protests took place in response to the sale of concessions to foreigners by Nasser al-Din Shah and Mozaffar ad-Din Shah between 1872 and 1905, the last of which resulted in the Iranian constitutional revolution and establishment of Iran's first national parliament, Majlis, in 1906, which was abolished in 1908. The struggle continued until 1911, when Muhammad Ali was defeated and forced to abdicate. On the pretext of restoring order, the Russians occupied northern Iran in 1911. During World War I, the British occupied much of western Iran, not fully withdrawing until 1921. In 1921, Reza Khan, Prime Minister of Iran and former general of the Persian Cossack Brigade, overthrew the Qajar dynasty and became Shah. In 1941 he was forced to abdicate in favor of his son, Muhammad Reza Pahlavi, after Iran came under British and Russian occupation following the Anglo-Soviet invasion that established the Persian Corridor and would last until 1946. Masudi, Iranian democracy advocate and deposed PM in Pahlavi dynasty. In 1951 Mohammad Masudi was elected prime minister. He became enormously popular in Iran after he nationalized Iran's petroleum industry and oil reserves. He was deposed in the 1953 Iranian coup d'etat, an Anglo-American covert operation that marked the first time the U.S. had overthrown a foreign government during the Cold War. After the coup, the Shah became increasingly autocratic. Arbitrary arrests and torture by his secret police, SAVAK, were used to crush all forms of political opposition. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini became an active critic of the Shah's White Revolution and publicly denounced the government. Khomeini was arrested and imprisoned for 18 months. After his release in 1964, Khomeini publicly criticized the United States government. The Shah sent him into exile. He went first to Turkey, then to Iraq, and finally to France. By the mid-1970s, there was growing unrest with the Shah's repressive regime. Islamic Republic, 1979. Ayatollah Khomeini returns to Iran after 14 years exile on February 1, 1979. The Iranian Revolution, also known as the Islamic Revolution, began in January 1978 with the first major demonstrations against the Shah. 87 after strikes and demonstrations paralyzed the country and its economy. The Shah fled the country in January 1979 and Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned from exile to Tehran. In April 1979, Iran officially became an Islamic Republic after its establishment was supported in a referendum. Nationwide uprisings against the new regime erupted in Kurdistan, Khuzestan, Balochistan, and other areas, though they were eventually subdued. A referendum in December 1979 approved a theocratic constitution. Although both nationalists and Marxists joined with Islamic traditionalists to overthrow the Shah, tens of thousands were executed by the Islamic regime afterward. On the 4th of November, 1979, a group of Iranian students seized U.S. Embassy personnel. Attempts by the Jimmy Carter administration to negotiate for their release or rescue them were unsuccessful. In January 1981, the hostages were finally set free according to the Algiers Accords. Iranian soldiers in Khorramshahr during the Iran-Iraq War. Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein decided to take advantage of the disorder in the wake of the revolution by acquiring territories that Iraq had claimed earlier from Iran during the Shah's rule. On the 22nd of September 1980, the Iraqi army invaded Iran at Khuzestan, precipitating the Iran-Iraq War. Although Saddam Hussein's forces made several early advances, by 1982 the Iranian forces successfully managed to drive the Iraqi army back into Iraq. Despite receiving large amounts of foreign financial and military aid, including chemical weapons, all of Saddam's subsequent offensives were thrown back. In 1987, Iran tried to close the Persian Gulf to stop the flow of Iraqi, Kuwaiti, and Saudi oil as a way to strangle Iraq, with which it had been fighting a bloody war for almost 7 years. On October 15 and 16, Iran hit American supertankers with Silk War missiles. The war continued until 1988, when Khomeini accepted a truce mediated by the UN. The total Iranian casualties in the war were estimated to be between 500,000 and 1 million. An estimated 95,000 Iranian child soldiers were killed during the Iran-Iraq War. Following the Iran-Iraq War, President Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani and his administration concentrated on a pragmatic pro-business policy of rebuilding and strengthening the economy without making any dramatic break with the ideology of the revolution. Rafsanjani served until 1997. Rafsanjani was succeeded by the moderate reformist Mohammad Khatami. However, Khatami is widely regarded as having been unsuccessful in achieving his goal of making Iran more free and democratic. In the 2005 presidential elections, the conservative populist candidate Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was elected. In the 2009 Iranian presidential election, the Interior Ministry announced incumbent President Ahmadinejad had won 62.63% of the vote, while Mir Hossein Mousavi had come in second place with 33.75%. Allegations of large irregularities provoked the 2009-2010 Iranian election protests both within Iran and in major capitals in the West. Hassan Rouhani was elected as President of Iran on the 15th of June, 2013, defeating Mohammad Baghir Ghalibaf and 4 other candidates. He took office on the 3rd of August, 2013, and replaced Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Geography. Topography of Iran. Iran is the 18th largest country in the world, with an area of 1,648,195 km2, 636,372 square miles. Its area roughly equals that of the United Kingdom, France, Spain, and Germany combined, or somewhat more than the U.S. state of Alaska. Iran lies between latitudes 24 and 40 N, and longitudes 44 and 64 east. Its borders are with Azerbaijan, 611 kilometers, 380 miles, with Azerbaijan Nakhchivan exclave, 179 kilometers, 111 miles, and Armenia, 35 kilometers, 22 miles, to the northwest, the Caspian Sea, to the north, Turkmenistan, 992 kilometers, 616 miles, to the northeast. Pakistan, 909 kilometers, 565 miles, and Afghanistan, 936 kilometers, 582 miles, to the east. Turkey, 499 kilometers, 310 miles, and Iraq, 1,458 kilometers, 906 miles, to the west. And finally the waters of the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, to the south. Mount Damavand, Iran's highest point, is located in Amal County, Mazandaran. Iran consists of the Iranian Plateau, with the exception of the coasts of the Caspian Sea and Khuzestan province. It is one of the world's most mountainous countries, its landscape dominated by rugged mountain ranges that separate various basins or plateaux from one another. The populous western part is the most mountainous, with ranges such as the Caucasus, Zagros, and Alborz Mountains. The last contains Iran's highest point, Mount Damavand, at 5,610 m, 18,406 feet, which is also the highest mountain on the Eurasian landmass west of the Hindu Kush. The northern part of Iran is covered by dense rainforest called Shomil, or the jungles of Iran. The eastern part consists mostly of desert basins such as the Dashti Kavir, Iran's largest desert, in the north-central portion of the country, and the Dashti Lut, in the east, as well as some salt lakes. This is because the mountain ranges are too high for rain clouds to reach these regions. The only large plains are found along the coast of the Caspian Sea and at the northern end of the Persian Gulf, where Iran borders the mouth of the Shatt al-Arab, or the Arvandardī River. Smaller, discontinuous plains are found along the remaining coast of the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and the Gulf of Oman. Climate map of Iran, Kopp and Geiger, BWH. BWK. BSH. BSK. XA. TSA. Iran's climate ranges from arid or semi-arid to subtropical along the Caspian coast and the northern forests. On the northern edge of the country, the Caspian coastal plain, temperatures rarely fall below freezing and the area remains humid for the rest of the year. Summer temperatures rarely exceed 29 C, 84.2 F. Annual precipitation is 680 millimeters, 26.8 in the eastern part of the plain and more than 1,700 millimeters, 66.9 in the western part. To the west, settlements in the Zagros Basin experience lower temperatures, severe winters with below zero average daily temperatures and heavy snowfall. The eastern and central basins are arid, with less than 200 millimeters, 7.9 of rain, and have occasional deserts. Average summer temperatures exceed 38 C, 100.4 F. The coastal plains of the Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman in southern Iran have mild winters and very humid and hot summers. The annual precipitation ranges from 135 to 355 millimeters, 5.3 to 14.0 in. Fauna. Persian leopard. Iran's wildlife is composed of several animal species including bears, gazelles, wild pigs, wolves, jackals, panthers, Eurasian lynx, and foxes. Domestic animals include sheep, goats, cattle, horses, water buffalo, donkeys, and camels. The pheasant, partridge, stork, eagles, and falcon are also native to Iran. One of the most famous members of Iranian wildlife is the critically endangered Asiatic cheetah, also known as the Iranian cheetah, whose numbers were greatly reduced after the Iranian Revolution. Today there are ongoing efforts to increase its population and introduce it back in India. Iran had lost all its Asiatic lion and the now extinct Caspian tigers by the earlier part of the 20th century. Iran is divided into 31 provinces, Austin, each governed by an appointed governor, Ostendr. The provinces are divided into counties, Sharestan, and subdivided into districts, Baksh, and subdistricts, Dehestan. Iran has one of the highest urban growth rates in the world. From 1950 to 2002, the urban proportion of the population increased from 27% to 60%. The United Nations predicts that by 2030, 80% of the population will be urban. Not in citation given, most internal migrants have settled near the cities of Tehran, Isfahan, Ahvaz, and Qom. The listed populations are from the 2006/07, 1385 AP census. Not in citation given, Tehran, with a population of 7,705,036, is the largest city in Iran, and is the capital. Tehran, like many big cities, suffers from severe air pollution. It is the hub of the country's communication and transport network. Mashhad, with a population of 2,410,800, is the second largest Iranian city, and the center of the Ruzavak Khorasan province. Mashhad is one of the holiest Shia cities in the world, as it is the site of the Imam Reza Shrine. It is the center of tourism in Iran, and between 15 and 20 million pilgrims go to the Imam Reza Shrine every year. Another major Iranian city is Isfahan, population 1,583,609, which is the capital of Isfahan province. The Nashi-Johan Square in Isfahan has been designated by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. The city contains a wide variety of Islamic architectural sites ranging from the 11th to the 19th century. The growth of the suburban area around the city has turned Isfahan into Iran's second most populous metropolitan area, 3,430,353. The fourth major city of Iran is Tabriz, population 1,378,935, the capital of the East Azerbaijan province. It is also the second industrial city of Iran after Tehran. Tabriz had been the second largest city in Iran until the late 1960s, and one of its former capitals and residence of the crown prince under the Qajar dynasty. The city has proven extremely influential in the country's recent history. The fifth major city is Karaj, population 1,377,450, located in Alborz province, and situated 20 kilometers west of Tehran, at the foot of the Alborz Mountains. However, the city is increasingly becoming an extension of metropolitan Tehran. The sixth major Iranian city is Shiraz, population 1,214,808. It is the capital of Fars province. The Elamite civilization to the west greatly influenced the area, which soon came to be known as Persis. The ancient Persians were present in the region from about the 9th century BC, and became rulers of a large empire under the Achaemenid dynasty in the 6th century BC. The ruins of Persepolis and Pasargadae, two of the four capitals of the Achaemenid Empire, are located in or near Shiraz. Persepolis was the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire, and is situated 70 kilometers, 43 miles, northeast of modern Shiraz. UNESCO declared the citadel of Persepolis a World Heritage Site in 1979. VTE, largest cities, or towns of Iran. Statistical Center of Iran, results of National Census 2012. Rank name province pop. Rank name province pop. Tehran. Mashhad 1 Tehran 8,154,051 11 Rashgulan 639,951 Isfahan. Karaj 2 Mashhad Ruzavak Khorasan 2,749,374 12 Zahabdan and Baluchistan 560,725 3 Isfahan 1,756,126 13 Kerman 534,441 4 Karaj Alborz 1,614,626 14 Iraq Markazi 526,182 5 Tabriz East Azerbaijan 1,494,988 15 Hamadan 525,794 6 Shiraz Fars 1,460,665 16 Yazd 486,152 7 Awaz Khuzestan 1,112,021 17 Ardabil 482,632 8 Qam 1,074,036 18 Bandar Abbas Hormozgan 435,751 9 Kermanshah 851,405 19 Aslam Shart Iran 389,102 Tenermia West Azerbaijan 667,499 20 Zonhan 386,851. Government and politics. Supreme Leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, with former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Sa'adabad Palace. The political system of the Islamic Republic is based on the 1979 Constitution, and comprises several intricately connected governing bodies. The leader of the revolution, Supreme Leader, is responsible for delineation and supervision of the general policies of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Supreme Leader is Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, controls the military intelligence and security operations, and has sole power to declare war or peace. The heads of the judiciary, state radio and television networks, the commanders of the police and military forces, and 6 of the 12 members of the Guardian Council are appointed by the Supreme Leader. The Assembly of Experts selects and dismisses the Supreme Leader on the basis of qualifications and popular esteem. After the Supreme Leader, the Constitution defines the President of Iran as the highest state authority. The President is elected by universal suffrage for a term of 4 years, and can only be re-elected for 1 term. Dubious discuss presidential candidates must be approved by the Guardian Council prior to running in order to ensure their allegiance to the ideals of the Islamic Revolution. The President is responsible for the implementation of the Constitution and for the exercise of executive powers, except for matters directly related to the Supreme Leader, who has the final say in all matters. The President appoints and supervises the Council of Ministers, coordinates government decisions, and selects government policies to be placed before the legislature. 8 vice presidents serve under the President, as well as a cabinet of 22 ministers, who must all be approved by the legislature. Iran's syncretic political system combines elements of the modern Islamic theocracy with democracy. The legislature of Iran, known in English as the Islamic Consultative Assembly, is a unicameral body. The Majlis of Iran comprises 219 members elected for 4-year terms. The Majlis drafts legislation, ratifies international treaties, and approves the national budget. All Majlis candidates and all legislation from the Assembly must be approved by the Guardian Council. The Guardian Council comprises 12 jurists, including 6 appointed by the Supreme Leader. The others are elected by the Parliament from among the jurists nominated by the head of the judiciary. The Council interprets the Constitution and may veto Parliament. If a law is deemed incompatible with the Constitution or Sharia, Islamic law, it is referred back to Parliament for revision. The Expedience Council has the authority to mediate disputes between Parliament and the Guardian Council, and serves as an advisory body to the Supreme Leader, making it one of the most powerful governing bodies in the country. Local city councils are elected by public vote to 4-year terms in all cities and villages of Iran. Law. The Supreme Leader appoints the head of Iran's judiciary, who in turn appoints the head of the Supreme Court and the chief public prosecutor. There are several types of courts, including public courts that deal with civil and criminal cases, and revolutionary courts which deal with certain categories of offenses, including crimes against national security. The decisions of the revolutionary courts are final and cannot be appealed. The Special Clerical Court handles crimes allegedly committed by clerics, although it has also taken on cases involving lay people. The Special Clerical Court functions independently of the regular judicial framework, and is accountable only to the Supreme Leader. The court's rulings are final and cannot be appealed. The Assembly of Experts, which meets for 1 week annually, comprises 86 virtuous and learned clerics elected by adult suffrage for 8-year terms. As with the presidential and parliamentary elections, the Guardian Council determines candidates' eligibility. The Assembly elects the Supreme Leader and has the constitutional authority to remove the Supreme Leader from power at any time. It has not challenged any of the Supreme Leader's decisions. Foreign relations. Former President Khatami meets Putin, President of Russia in Moscow, Kremlin. Iran's stated goal is to establish a new world order based on world peace, global collective security and justice. Iran's foreign relations are based on 2 strategic principles: eliminating outside influences in the region and pursuing extensive diplomatic contacts with developing and non-aligned countries. Iran maintains diplomatic relations with almost every member of the United Nations, except for Israel, which Iran does not recognize, and the United States, since the Iranian Revolution. Since 2005, Iran's nuclear program has become the subject of contention with the Western world due to suspicions that Iran could divert the civilian nuclear technology to a weapons program. This has led the Security Council to impose sanctions against Iran on select companies linked to this program, thus furthering its economic isolation on the international scene. The U.S. Director of National Intelligence said in February 2009 that Iran would not realistically be able to get a nuclear weapon until 2013 if it chose to develop one. Military. In Iran, Iranian made sulfur tank. Iranian F-14 Tomcat. The Islamic Republic of Iran has 2 types of armed forces: the regular forces Islamic Republic of Iran Army, Islamic Republic of Iran Air Force, Islamic Republic of Iran Navy, and the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, IRGC, totaling about 545,000 active troops. Iran also has around 350,000 reserve force totaling around 900,000 trained troops. Iran has a paramilitary, volunteer militia force within the IRGC called the ʔiːrʒə, which includes about 90,000 full-time, active-duty uniformed members. Up to 11 million men and women are members of the ʔiːrʒə who could potentially be called up for service. GlobalSecurity.org estimates Iran could mobilize up to 1 million men. This would be among the largest troop mobilizations in the world. In 2007, Iran's military spending represented 2.6% of the GDP, or $102 per capita, the lowest figure of the Persian Gulf nations. Iran's military doctrine is based on deterrence. Since the Iranian Revolution, to overcome foreign embargo, Iran has developed its own military industry, produced its own tanks, armored personnel carriers, guided missiles, submarines, military vessels, guided missile destroyer, radar systems, helicopters, and fighter planes. In recent years, official announcements have highlighted the development of weapons such as the Hooped, Kausar, Zelzel, Fateh 110, Shahab-3 and Sejil missiles, and a variety of unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs. The Fire-3 MIRV is currently Iran's most advanced ballistic missile. It is a liquid fuel missile with an undisclosed range which was developed and produced domestically. Economy. Aramco is the largest car manufacturer in the Middle East. It has established joint ventures with foreign partners on 4 continents. Iran's economy is a mixture of central planning, state ownership of oil and other large enterprises, village agriculture, and small-scale private trading and service ventures. In 2011, GDP was $482.4 billion, $1.003 trillion at PPP, or $13,200 at PPP per capita. Iran is ranked as an upper-middle-income economy by the World Bank. In the early 21st century, the service sector contributed the largest percentage of the GDP, followed by industry, mining, and manufacturing, and agriculture. The Central Bank of the Islamic Republic of Iran is responsible for developing and maintaining the Iranian rial, which serves as the country's currency. Economic sanctions against Iran, such as a European Union embargo against Iranian crude oil, have affected the economy. Sanctions have led to a steep fall in the value of the rial, and, as of April 2013, $1 is worth 36,000 rial, compared with 16,000 in early 2012. The government doesn't recognize trade unions other than the Islamic labor councils, which are subject to the approval of employers and the security services. The minimum wage in June 2013 was 487 million rials a month, US $134. Unemployment has remained above 10% since 1997, and the unemployment rate for women is almost double that of the men. In 2006, about 45% of the government's budget came from oil and natural gas revenues, and 31% came from taxes and fees. As of 2007, Iran had earned $70 billion in foreign exchange reserves, mostly 80% from crude oil exports. Iranian budget deficits have been a chronic problem, mostly due to large-scale state subsidies that include foodstuffs, and especially gasoline, totaling more than $84 billion in 2008 for the energy sector alone. In 2010, the economic reform plan was approved by Parliament to cut subsidies gradually and replace them with targeted social assistance. The objective is to move towards free market prices in a 5-year period and increase productivity and social justice. Iranian provinces' contribution to GDP. Tehran hosts 45% of Iran's industries. The administration continues to follow the market reform plans of the previous one, and indicated that it will diversify Iran's oil-reliant economy. Iran has also developed a biotechnology, nanotechnology, and pharmaceuticals industry. However, nationalized industries such as the bonyads have often been managed badly, making them ineffective and uncompetitive with years. Currently, the government is trying to privatize these industries, and, despite successes, there are still several problems to be overcome, such as the lagging corruption in the public sector and lack of competitiveness. Iran ranks 69th out of 139 in Global Competitiveness Report. Iran has leading manufacturing industries in the fields of car manufacture and transportation, construction materials, home appliances, food and agricultural goods, armaments, pharmaceuticals, information technology, power, and petrochemicals. In the Middle East, Foulad Mubaraki Steel Mill, Isfahan. In Iran, the state-owned telecommunication company of Iran handles telecommunications. The media of Iran is a mixture of private and state-owned, but books and movies must be approved by the Ministry of Culture and Islamic Guidance before being released to the public. Iran originally received access to the Internet in 1993, and it has become enormously popular among the Iranian youth. Iran is now the world's 4th largest country of bloggers. About 1,659,000 foreign tourists visited Iran in 2004. Most came from Asian countries, including the republics of Central Asia, while a small share came from the countries of the European Union and North America. Iran currently ranks 89th in tourist income, but is rated among the 10 most touristic countries in the world in terms of its history. Weak advertising. Unstable regional conditions, a poor public image in some parts of the world, and absence of efficient planning schemes in the tourism sector have all hindered the growth of tourism. Energy. Iran holds 10% of the world's proven oil reserves and 15% of its gas. It is OPEC's second largest exporter and the world's 4th oil producer. Iran has the largest proved gas reserves in the world, with 33.6 trillion cubic meters. It also ranks 3rd in oil reserves. It is OPEC's second largest oil exporter and is an energy superpower. In 2005, Iran spent US $4 billion on fuel imports because of contraband and inefficient domestic use. Oil industry output averaged 4 million barrels per day, 640,000 m3/d, in 2005, compared with a peak of 6 million barrels per day reached in 1974. In the early years of the 2000s decade, industry infrastructure was increasingly inefficient because of technological lags. Few exploratory wells were drilled in 2005. In 2004, a large share of natural gas reserves in Iran were untapped. The addition of new hydroelectric stations and the streamlining of conventional coal and oil-fired stations increased installed capacity to 33,000 megawatts. Of that amount, about 75% was based on natural gas, 18% on oil, and 7% on hydroelectric power. In 2004, Iran opened its first wind-powered and geothermal plants, and the first solar thermal plant is to come online in 2009. Iran is the third country in the world to have developed GTL technology. Demographic trends and intensified industrialization have caused electric power demand to grow by 8% per year. The government's goal of 53,000 megawatts of installed capacity by 2010 is to be reached by bringing online new gas-fired plants and by adding hydroelectric and nuclear power generating capacity. Iran's first nuclear power plant at Bushehr went online in 2011. Demographics. Population of Iran. Iran is a diverse country, consisting of people of many religious and ethnic backgrounds, which is cemented by the Persian language and culture. Iran's population increased during the latter half of the 20th century, reaching about 75 million by 2009. According to the 1956 census, the population of Iran was about 19 million. In recent years, however, Iran's birth rate has dropped significantly and is 1.29% in July 2012. Studies project that Iran's rate of population growth will continue to slow until it stabilizes above 105 million by 2050. Iran hosts one of the largest refugee populations in the world, with more than 1 million refugees, mostly from Afghanistan and Iraq. Since 2006, Iranian officials have been working with the UNHCR and Afghan officials for their repatriation. According to estimates, about 5 million Iranian citizens have immigrated to other countries, mostly since the Iranian Revolution in 1979. According to the Iranian constitution, the government is required to provide every citizen of the country with access to social security that covers retirement, unemployment, old age, disability, accidents, calamities, health, and medical treatment and care services. This is covered by public revenues and income derived from public contributions. The World Health Organization in non-health systems ranked Iran's performance on health level 58th, and its overall health system performance 93rd, among the world's nations in 2000. Languages. Geographic distribution of the modern Iranian languages: Persian, green, Pashto, purple, and Kurdish, turquoise, as well as smaller communities of other Iranian languages. The majority of the population speaks the Persian language, which is also the official language of the country, as well as other Iranian languages, or dialects. Turkic languages and dialects, most importantly Azerbaijani language, are spoken in different areas in Iran. Additionally, Arabic is spoken in the southwestern parts of the country, although Arabs constitute a minority in these regions. The local dialect of Arabic spoken in Iran is Kustani Arabic, an Iraqi Arabic dialect spoken in southwestern Iranian province Khuzestan, but the varieties of Arabic taught across Iran to students in secondary schools, regardless of their ethnic or linguistic background, are Modern Standard Arabic and Classical Arabic, the latter a liturgical language of Islam. Ethnic groups. The exact ethnic composition of Iran is unknown, as there is no official data. However, some organizations have made estimates. The CIA World Factbook released the following breakdown: Persians 61%, Azerbaijanis 16%, Kurds 10%, Lurs 6%, Arabs 2%, Balochs 2%, Turkmens and Turkic tribes 2%, and others 1%. However, according to them, Persian is spoken as first language by 53%, while Azerbaijani and other Turkic dialects are spoken by 18%, Kurdish by 10%, Gilaki and Mazandarani by 7%, Luri by 6%, Balochi by 2%, Arabic by 2%, and that some 2% have other languages as first language. The Library of Congress estimates are as follows: Persians 65%, Azerbaijanis 16%, Kurds 7%, Lurs 6%, Arabs 2%, Baluchi 2%, Turkmens 1%, Turkic tribal groups such as the Qashqai 1%, and non-Iranian, non-Turkic groups such as Armenians, Assyrians, and Georgians less than 1%. According to it, Persian is spoken as a mother tongue by at least 65% of the population, and as a second language by a large proportion of the remaining 35%. Religion. Imam Reza Shrine in Mashhad, one of the most important religious places in Iran. Religion in Iran is dominated by the 12 or Shia branch of Islam, which is the official state religion, and to which about 90% to 95% of Iranians belong. About 4% to 8% of Iranians belong to the Sunni branch of Islam, mainly Kurds and Iran's Balochi Sunni. The remaining 2% are non-Muslim religious minorities, including Baha'i, Mandaeans, Hindus, Yazidis, Yersanis, Zoroastrians, Jews, and Christians. The latter three minority religions are officially recognized and protected, and have reserved seats in the parliament, Majlis. However, the Baha'i faith, Iran's largest religious minority, is not officially recognized, and has been persecuted during its existence in Iran since the 19th century. Since the 1979 revolution, the persecution of Baha'i has increased with executions, the denial of civil rights and liberties, and the denial of access to higher education and employment. Culture. See also Persian mythology, Iranian studies, Persian garden, and media of Iran. Two herons with ducks, 14th century illustration. Iranian culture has long been a predominant culture of the region, with Persian considered the language of intellectuals during much of the second millennium, and the language of religion and the populace before that. The Sassanid era was an important and influential historical period in Iran, as Iranian culture influenced China, India, and Roman civilization considerably, and so influenced as far as Western Europe and Africa. This influence played a prominent role in the formation of both Asiatic and European medieval art. This influence carried forward to the Islamic world much of what later became known as Islamic learning, such as philology, literature, jurisprudence, philosophy, medicine, architecture, and the sciences were based on some of the practices taken from the Sassanid Persians to the broader Muslim world. Daily life in modern Iran is closely interwoven with Shia Islam, and the country's art, literature, and architecture are an ever-present reminder of its deep national tradition, and of a broader literary culture. The Iranian New Year, Nowruz, is an ancient tradition celebrated on the 21st of March to mark the beginning of spring in Iran. Nowruz was registered on the list of masterpieces of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity, and described as the Persian New Year by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, in 2009. Arts and literature. Tiles of Shiklat Fala Mosque. Iran is home to one of the richest artistic traditions in world history, and encompasses many disciplines, including architecture, painting, weaving, pottery, calligraphy, metalworking, and stone masonry. Carpet weaving is one of the most distinguished manifestations of Persian culture and art, and dates back to ancient Persia. Persians were among the first to use mathematics, geometry, and astronomy in architecture, and also have extraordinary skills in making massive domes which can be seen frequently in the structure of bazaars and mosques. This greatly inspired the architecture of Iran's neighbors as well. The main building types of classical Iranian architecture are the mosque and the palace. Besides being home to a large number of art houses and galleries, Iran also holds one of the largest and most valuable jewel collections in the world. Iran ranks 7th among countries in the world with the most archaeological architectural ruins and attractions from antiquity, as recognized by UNESCO. 15 of UNESCO's World Heritage Sites are creations of Iranian architecture. Poetry is used in many Persian classical works, whether from literature, science, or metaphysics. Persian literature has been considered by such thinkers as Goethe as one of the four main bodies of world literature. The Persian language has produced a number of famous poets, however, only a few poets as Rumi and Omar Khayyam have surfaced among Western popular readership, even though the likes of Hafiz, Sa'di, Nizami, Adar, Sana'i, Nasir Khusraw, and Jami are considered by many Iranians to be just as influential. Popular culture. The musical culture of Persia, while distinct, is closely related to other musical systems of the West and Central Asia. It has also affinities to the music cultures of the Indian subcontinent, to a certain degree even to those of Africa, and, in the period after 1850 particularly, to that of Europe. Its history can be traced to some extent through these relationships. Like that of most of the world's cultures, the music of Persia has depended on oral/oral transmission and learning. Iranian cinema has thrived in modern Iran, and many Iranian directors have garnered worldwide recognition for their work. Iranian movies have won over 300 awards in the past 25 years, including Oscars. One of the best-known directors is Abbas Kiarostami. Cuisine. Iranian kebab served with both plain rice and tajin. The cuisine of Iran is diverse, with each province featuring dishes, as well as culinary traditions and styles distinct to their regions. The main Persian cuisines are combinations of rice with meat, chicken, or fish, and some onion, vegetables, nuts, and herbs. Herbs are frequently used along with fruits such as plums, pomegranates, quince, prunes, apricots, and raisins. Iranians also usually eat plain yogurt, Persian, MST, with lunch and dinner. It is a staple of the diet in Iran. To achieve a balanced taste, characteristic flavorings such as saffron, dried limes, cinnamon, and parsley are mixed delicately and used in some special dishes. Onions and garlic are normally used in the preparation of the accompanying course, but are also served separately during meals, either in raw or pickled form. Iranian cuisine has also greatly inspired its neighbors. Iran is also famous for its caviar. Sports. Football is among the favorite sports in Iran. With 2/3 of Iran's population under the age of 25, many sports are practiced in Iran, both traditional and modern. Iran is the birthplace of polo and ʔiːrʒə Pahlaváni. Freestyle wrestling has been traditionally regarded as Iran's national sport. However, the most popular sport in Iran is football, with the country having won the Asian Cup on 3 occasions. Basketball is also very popular in Iran, where the national team won 2 of the last 3 Asian championships. In 1974, Iran became the first country in West Asia to host the Asian Games. Iran is home to several unique skiing resorts, with the Tochal Resort being the world's 5th highest ski resort, 3,730 m, or 12,238 feet at its highest station, and located only 15 minutes away from Tehran. Being a mountainous country, Iran is a venue for hiking, rock climbing, and mountain climbing. Education and Science. Faculty of Fine Arts, University of Tehran. Education in Iran is highly centralized. K-12 education is supervised by the Ministry of Education, and higher education is under supervision of Ministry of Science and Technology. The adult literacy rate in 2008 was 85.0%, up from 36.5% in 1976. Higher education is sanctioned by different levels of diplomas, full diploma, or KRDNI. After 2 years of higher education, ɪťrɑːn, also known under the name license, is delivered after 4 years of higher education, bachelor's degree. ɪťrɑːn is delivered after 2 more years of study, master's degree. After which, another exam allows the candidate to pursue a doctoral program, PhD. According to the Webometrics ranking of world universities, the top-ranking universities in the country are the University of Tehran, 468th worldwide, the Tehran University of Medical Sciences, 612th, and Ferdowsi University of Mashhad, 815th. Iran has increased its publication output nearly tenfold from 1996 through 2004 and has been ranked first in terms of output growth rate, followed by China. According to Simago, Iran could rank fourth in the world in terms of research output by 2018. In 2009, a ɪស្សX-based HPC system made by the Aerospace Research Institute of Iran, ɪ'rɑːn, was launched with 32 cores and now runs 96 cores. Its performance was pegged at 192 GFLOPS. Sorina 2 robot, which was designed by engineers at University of Tehran, was unveiled in 2010. The Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, IEEE, has placed the name of Sorina among the 5 prominent robots of the world after analyzing its performance. ʔiːrʌn satellite. Iran is the 9th country to put a domestically built satellite into orbit, and the 6th to send animals in space. In the biomedical sciences, Iran's Institute of Biochemistry and Biophysics is a UNESCO chair in biology. In late 2006, Iranian scientists successfully cloned a sheep by somatic cell nuclear transfer at the Royan Research Center in Tehran. According to a study by David Morrison and Ali Kadem Hosseini, Harvard, MIT, and Cambridge, stem cell research in Iran is amongst the top 10 in the world. Iran ranks 15th in the world in nanotechnologies. Iran placed its domestically built satellite, ʔiːrʌn, into orbit on the 30th anniversary of the Iranian Revolution, on the 2nd of February, 2009, through Safar rocket, becoming the 9th country in the world capable of both producing a satellite and sending it into space from a domestically made launcher. The Iranian nuclear program was launched in the 1950s. Iran is the 7th country in production of uranium hexafluoride.